I'm getting a head start on making my own Halloween decor since I like to make pretty much everything myself. I won't be decorating for Halloween just yet, but I wanted to do a little Summer-ween video and have fun doing some spooky inspired Halloween crafts. I'm just too excited for the Halloween season and I wanted to get started on some fun DIY projects. In this video we will be making some bat inspired crafts with items from my craft collection. So let's get crafting and see what we can make in preparation for a stylish Halloween season. I raided my craft closet for supplies and I skimmed all of my inspiration and decided on 2 projects that I want to try and tackle today. They are both from Pottery Barn and I want to either create dupes or my own version of these items. The first item is a bat chandelier and I thought I could use some embroidery hoops to create the chandelier and string them together. This was actually another DIY I was playing around with, and I crocheted a little spider web and strung it in this hoop, but I can always get another hoop if I need to. So I was thinking I could hang 2 or 3 of these hoops together with string and then make bats out of, I can't decide if I want to make my bats out of felt or cardstock, so I might just play around with the materials and see what lends itself better. I might be inclined to say felt because it would store a little bit better and be a little bit more durable, but cardstock is super cheap and lightweight and I do have a lot of it, and I do have inspiration images that use both felt and cardstock, so I just have to decide which style I like best. I also have this glitter foam and I do not have enough of this to do a whole bat chandelier, but I'm contemplating doing some accents with this, or I could just save it for another project. My other Pottery Barn inspired craft is creating these yarn wrapped bats for a wall hanging. I can't remember what they're called, but I will include the picture of the inspiration image that I found. I thought that I could cut bats out of cardboard, spray paint them black, and then wrap them with black yarn. I'm not entirely sure if I will finish both of these projects in this video, but let's see how far we can get. I cut out my spider web to save it for a future DIY project. For this project, you only need the inner part of the embroidery hoops. So I took these and I will save the other part with the metal hardware for another craft. Took my embroidery hoops outside to spray paint them black. Wood absorbs paint very quickly, so you do need to do 2 to 3 coats to get a nice even full coverage on these. It was very hot outside, so the spray paint was drying really quickly for me. If you don't have black spray paint, you can also use black acrylic craft paint to paint your hoops instead. It is the next day. I had some work projects come up yesterday that I needed to finish last minute, so I wasn't able to do any crafting. I am now so tired and exhausted and I really need a craft day. I wanted to create a fall tea drink, so I combined cinnamon apple spice tea with gingerbread spice tea, and it made the perfect cozy autumn tea. I added some cream and sugar into my tea and it looked just like a magic potion, and I loved the way these 2 teas tasted together. After sitting down with our fall tea, it was time to get our cozy craft on. I got out all of the materials I would be using for this project and then got my space all set up. Alright, so the only thing I really accomplished yesterday, which I don't know that you can really see, is spray painting my frames black. I did come up with a way I want to do the bats. So I have these bat templates that I made a couple of years ago. I was going to hang these bats on my wall, but I just never did, but I do think I will put them up this year. I think I will use a few different sizes of bats, and I just printed these out and then made the templates out of cereal boxes. So I think I'll probably use these 3 sizes and cut my bats out of felt. I did debate doing them out of paper, but I just think the felt looks a lot more expensive and high-end. Yes, it's like 80 or 90 degrees outside and I am drinking tea because I want to pretend that it's fall. And it's so cozy and delicious. I think I want to put on a little fall themed movie or something, and then I will start figuring out my project.
My felt had picked up some fuzzies from being in my craft collection, so I cleaned that up with a little bit of tape because I couldn't find my lint roller. And then I started prepping my felt to create the bats. The material I'm using here is called Wonder Under. It's a double-sided fusible backing. One side has a paper that will peel away. I cut the adhesive to the size of my felt and then took it to my ironing board. I would recommend starting out with a pretty low heat, so I used a low heat on my iron. If the glue is not melting together, you can turn your heat up a little bit, but start low and work your way up so you don't melt or shrink your felt. Using a regular pen, I trace my bat template onto the paper backing of the fusible. You then want to cut around each of your bats and leave the paper on until you have the design entirely cut out. This helps give the felt a really clean cut edge. Black felt is very hard to trace a pattern onto, so I found this technique worked best. Now you will need a second piece of felt, and you peel the paper backing off of your bats and arrange them all onto your piece of felt. I like to fit as many onto one piece of felt as I can, so I often rearrange to get the best fit of the puzzle pieces as I can. You will then need to take this back to your iron. I don't like to iron directly on top of the felt, but you can. I use a thin dishcloth or a scrap of fabric, old pillowcase, anything you have on hand, just as a thin layer between the felt and the iron. This will keep your felt from melting or getting shiny if your iron is a little bit too hot. Just make sure that you have your iron hot enough that the two pieces of felt fuse together with that glue in the center. You then need to go back in and cut out your bats again. I just use my first bat as a template and then cut off the excess felt. And then repeat the process over and over again to make a bunch of bats, because you are going to need a lot of bats to assemble this chandelier. I don't really mind tedious craft parts like this because I enjoy putting on a show and then just getting to work. I did spend all evening cutting out bats. Keep that in mind if you decide to do this craft project. I thought this would be a quick 1 to 2 day craft project, but I didn't factor in how much time it would take to cut out all of these bats. I also only get 2 to 3 hours of crafting in during the day when my daughter is napping. You might be able to finish this in less than a week if you have more time to craft during your day than I do. I really love how these bats turned out. The edges look so clean and professional. The fusible glue in between was really the way to go.
It's a new day because, let's face it, as a mama, I never get a craft done in one afternoon, but I just put my baby down for a nap.
I am a nap time crafter, so with my daughter sleeping, it was time to tackle this project again. First thing I needed to do was give my craft space a quick tidy. I don't know if you're like me, but I kind of am a creative tornado as I'm crafting. I feel like it's hard to make something and not make a mess while you're doing it.
We have reached the part of the process where I get to actually start assembling and seeing how I want the vision to come together. So I have my hoops here. I have some black and white striped string and some black embroidery floss. And then I have all of my bats here that I assembled. I made 6 of these larger bats, 30 of the tiny bats, and those took forever, and then 12 of the medium-sized bats. So I hope that's enough. If it's too much, I'm sure I will use them in other DIY projects. My technique actually worked out really well, which I'm super proud about. I used a fusible on felt. It allowed me, because it's really hard to trace onto black felt, get a really clean shape and then make it double thickness. It's also going to allow me to hide my thread as I'm stringing these together. So I did kind of do a practice and thread a few bats together just to see how it was going to look. I think I am going to unthread this just to make it be the right length. Oh, it's hard to see because it's dark, but I think this is gonna be really awesome and I'm so excited. All right, we are on day 3 of this craft. Let's see if we can finish or mostly finish this bat chandelier today. I'm also going to pick a fall Halloween themed show. I'm currently watching The Good Witch, which has some cute, cozy, light magic, small town vibes. I'm also watching Only Murders in the Building. I don't normally watch scary things, but it's a little bit more dramatized and more murder mystery, comedy. It's really not too scary for someone who doesn't like spooky, scary, true crime, anything, but I've really been enjoying Only Murders in the Building, and I just started season 3.
Let's get back to our spooky crafting. I started out by cutting lengths of 20 inches of this black and white striped string that I have. You could also just use black string, the black embroidery floss that you will use to string the bats together, but I had a lot of this, and so I thought I would use this to attach the layers of my chandelier together. I cut 6 lengths of string and then tried to evenly space them out as best as I could. This project is easiest to work on if you can hang your chandelier while you're working on it, so I used an overhead phone mount with table clamp, and that seemed to work really well for me. Use whatever you have in your house to hang your chandelier so that you can see how it looks as you go. I used more string cut to about 12-inch lengths. Your string can be whatever length you like, just go the distance you like between the 2 chandeliers and then leave a little extra for tying it on both ends. It's a little bit hard to get the second tier perfectly level, but I think a topsy-turvy chandelier is perfect for Halloween, so I wasn't too worried if one side was a little bit more slanted than another. One of the elements I really liked from the Pottery Barn chandelier was this sheer material with this rough cut edge. I knew I had this sparkly sheer spider web fabric. I thought that would be perfect to use just a little bit of to create that element of the chandelier. So I folded it up, cut the length of it with those zigzags. My width was about 3 inches before I added in zigzags, and then I was looking for a way to attach it to my chandelier. I didn't want to glue it directly to the chandelier because I thought you might see the hot glue through the sheer fabric. So I took a little bit more of my felt, cut long strips of it, and then whip stitched my sheer spider web element to the felt so that I could glue the felt to the frame and you wouldn't see any glue or stitching. I think it's little details like these, even though it takes so much longer, that elevate your project to looking high-end and store-bought as opposed to handmade and DIY'd. Even though I love a good DIY, I'm always looking for ways to elevate my projects and make them look more polished and finished. Spent the rest of the evening hand sewing and creating these lace elements to attach to my chandelier. I finally got to get out my hot glue gun and start attaching these spider web lace elements, and I think this really brings the craft together and helps it look a lot more finished, and I think this detail is just so pretty. To string the bats onto our bat chandelier, I took a black embroidery floss and divided it in half. Embroidery floss is always made up of 6 strands, so I took 3 strands and tied a knot at the bottom, and then I threaded my bats through. Stuck the needle through the center of the 2 layers of felt. Sometimes I went straight up through the center of the bats, and sometimes I went through at an angle so the bats would look like they were flying in different directions when I hung the string up. I only ended up using my small and medium bats. I started off each string with a small bat and then had one medium bat on each string, and I kind of tried to vary the placement of the bats so it didn't look too uniform. I had been debating if I wanted to do 2 or 3 layers in my chandelier, but I did decide that I wanted to do 3 layers in my chandelier just to make a little bit more of a statement piece. So I cut some shorter strings and tied on the smallest embroidery hoop at the bottom. It's finally time to start adding some bats to our chandelier. I love this part because this is when the chandelier truly starts to come to life and really look like those inspiration images. Because I had felt attached to my embroidery hoops, I was able to take a few stitches through the felt with my needle to attach my strings of bats at the top of the chandelier. I loved that I could adjust the placement of my bats after I had attached them to the chandelier. This allowed me to make sure that all of my bats kind of filled the chandelier out nicely and weren't too close together.
In this video, we created this stunning bat chandelier inspired by Pottery Barn. I hope you love how this turned out as much as I do. I really enjoyed creating this and I had a lot of fun with the inspiration. I also really enjoyed that I was able to make this project with everything I already had on hand and transform it into something truly magical that I'm excited to put up with my Halloween decor in a few weeks. I didn't get to my other DIY idea, so I hope you will subscribe and I will share that in a future video. Until next time, keep making magic.